The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
And a good Monday afternoon to you. This is Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, live on Facebook and on Twitter. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. What's going on, Claibs? How are you doing?
All good, ready to get the week off on the right foot, considering how it ended wasn't very strong. So I'm looking forward to this week.
You got a lot going on this week. Want to mention that this show is powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota. As I want to get into the baseball talk here in a bit, but first, Claibs, St. Louis, the sports scene in St. Louis took another blow last night as we learned of the passing of Greg Marecek, a guy that you have known for a very, very long time, and I've been very close with his family for the past decade here in St. Louis. I didn't get to know Greg as well as many people in the St. Louis area have. I think he was smart enough to get out of the AM sports radio business before I arrived in November of 2009. But his son John is one of my very best friends, and I feel for the family and everyone that's close to them. But I know you worked for Greg for many years.
Oh, yeah. Greg and I go back to the mid-'80s when he had the rights to St. Louis U basketball and put Bob Ramsey and I together to do Billiken basketball. But I knew Greg even before that when he was with the newspapers, and I can't think of the name of the newspaper off the top of my head. He was heavily involved community-wise, loved Webster Groves. But he was the third guy who took on the all-sports format. Rich Gray started it. Then it went on to a combination of Bob Birch and Karen Carroll. And when they sold it to Greg, he gave it a local flavor. I mean, it was locally owned and operated, and really took us to a new level with regard to a facility and just some ideas. And he was a wonderful person to work with. And amusing in his own way, because Greg had these interesting ideas on how to do things, but when it was all said and done, he was just a wonderful person. He really cared about people, and he really wanted that all sports format to work. As I said to somebody earlier today, he might be the only guy that's ever made any real money out of it when he sold it to those jokers in Atlanta, and everybody's been bailing water ever since. But just a huge contributor to St. Louis, a big fan of St. Louis and the sports and the history in St. Louis. And I considered him a good friend. Didn't see him as much as I would like to. I think the last time we crossed paths was at the 1-2-3 luncheon for the holidays, but he will be sorely missed. We won't have many guys like Greg Marecek that'll follow.
No, very influential in the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. Each and
he created
year.
it.
Yeah. He's been behind that and behind many things, and I've never heard a bad thing about him throughout the years. And given all of the different management and owners that I've seen in St. Louis sports talk over the years, that's something you don't see these days too much of.
Trader Greg is what he was called, because he trade out inventory for this or that, and he was a really shrewd businessman. I appreciated what he did for me in my career.
That's a good way to go about it. It's if you could figure out how to trade some things and get some things back, that's a good way to get some things taken care of in this business. So our condolences to the entire Marecek family on their loss. I know John posted a few different places the details, and we'll follow up with some of the other details as the days go on with that. So. Greg Marecek passes away last night. Moving on to the world of sports, the Cardinals also had a loss in their family as well, as it was announced last night that one of their scouts, Charles Peterson, passed away. Did you know him at all?
Just know him a little bit. Knew more of his reputation in baseball. A very well-respected baseball man. Also was a football coach as well in his hometown in South Carolina. And, if people don't think this COVID thing is serious, and we'll get into this about parents, well, I got to let little Johnny play. He can't, he got it being at a showcase event recently. And, a bunch of kids playing baseball. He got it there and went in the hospital, never came out. But a very integral guy to what the Cardinals are all about. As a matter of fact, our first round draft choice this year was his guy. And he's done some really good things within the organization. He's going to be definitely missed.
Yeah, that was news coming out last night. The Cardinals, as I mentioned, have a very big week ahead of them, coming off losing 2 out of 3 to the Reds in a playoff push that they're in. It's to start off the way it was Friday. It was bad enough. It was not a good way to start the weekend, but then they come back on Saturday. We see glimpses of what we saw from the team Thursday with the power hitting back on display. And then to get off such a good start on Sunday and see it unravel the way that it did, do you worry that this is something that could knock this team off the momentum that they were slowly starting to build? Especially 10 games against the Brewers to end the season this is what it comes down to. All these other games, all the first 39 games of the season, they don't matter anymore. You have 10 games left against the Brewers, and that's gonna determine if they make the postseason.
Well, you're right, and I am concerned, but when you're a 500 team, that's who you are. And you have your highs and your lows. And you keep thinking that, okay, we get a couple going here, we might be able to pull off a streak. Well, that also works in the other way. Well, boy, here we go again. And when you go back and forth like the Cardinals have, it's really hard to have a feel one way or the other. And the same thing can be said for the Milwaukee Brewers. They are a neutral team right now, and they're trying to find their way. And just like you said about this being a huge series for the Cardinals, it's huge for Milwaukee too. And they've shown no ability to be able to overtake anyone. So it's going to be a challenge because your pitching is getting a little thin. You're not getting anything from your outfield. And you have relied on maybe 3 or 4 people to produce on a regular basis. And that's going to take a lot more than that if you want to find yourself not only in postseason, but trying to have an impact in the postseason.
Yeah, we saw Austin Dean return to the lineup the other day, had a very, very good Saturday, but then goes 0 for on Sunday. As you mentioned, I was looking, the other day, Lane Thomas, everybody was hoping he would be that spark. He's hitting about 180. Harrison Bader still hasn't seemed to find it. All of his home runs this year have come off the Reds. You don't play the Reds anymore this year. You got to figure it out against one of the other teams. Dylan Carlson, he gets sent back to Springfield. Dexter Fowler, who knows if we're going to see him again this year and how that's going to work with his immune system right now. Tyler O'Neill hitting under 200. At some point, you need to find somebody that's going to have a bat, that's going to play one of those outfield positions. And, we've talked about it plenty. A 60-game season, you can't give a guy a week to figure it out. You can give him maybe 2 days, 3 days to figure it out. And with this stretch coming up, somebody's got to figure it out quick.
Yeah, and I don't know if that somebody's even here. The only other guy with big league experience, or at least potential to be a big leaguer, is Justin Williams, who's still in Springfield. Other than that, you don't have anything else. You can't make a trade. You can't sign a free agent. You're just stuck. And I don't know what's going to change between now and the end of the season, considering we've had enough of a sample size, in my opinion, to know what you have. And in my opinion, you may not have enough.
Yeah, the pitching, by the way, you take the hit. Gio Gallegos probably done for the year. Probably not going to see him. That injury he suffered, you're looking well into the second week of October before he might be able to come back. But KK does return today, so that's a positive, as he's starting one of the games of the doubleheader. So hopefully that's another arm you can add to that list, I guess.
Yeah, you got here are your guys. You got Hudson, Flaherty, Wainwright, KK, Oviedo will hopefully be back this week as well. So you got 5. So who did I leave out? Carlos, who you may have to move back to the bullpen to help Ryan Helsley and Andrew Miller and Tyler Webb, because you might shorten that bullpen up a little bit right now. And Carlos is long enough lengthwise where he could go there and still be effective. So with the bullpen start we may see down the road as well, there's a lot of moving parts right now. And trying to figure out this pitching staff. And I'm going to leave it in the hands of Mike Maddox and Mike Mike Schilt. They've done a really good job at this so far. And, it's not like they got a lot of alternatives right now.
Brian Hoffman sent me this stat as Ponce de Leon is set to pitch game 2. He's 0-7 as a starter, 17 starts into his career. If he suffers a loss or a no decision tonight, he will go into 5th place of the longest such streak to start a career without a win. It's so surprising. I mean, you think back to the first start he ever made when he had that no-hitter go in deep into the game. To think that he has not been able to put together 5-6 innings and leave the game with the team winning, it's some of it is bad luck.
Yeah, it is. But the other issue is he still has to figure out how to deal with adversity and pitch out of trouble. I mean, Ponce is his own worst enemy as far as just throwing too many pitches too early in the game. He's got good stuff, but man, once he has a hiccup behind him, it just doesn't go well for him. And that's something he's got to deal with internally. Physically, he's got major league stuff, but he has been able to find a block that prevents him from moving forward. He's got to be able to get through it, get around it, get over it, get under it, whatever, but he's got to be on the other side of it.
How are you looking at the postseason race right now? When you look at those standings, because every team is playing their own their own area, their own division, so it's hard to kind of look out there and we have no idea how the Cardinals would stack up against teams in the West or the East
you're right
now.
And one of the things that comes with that is familiarity, as you mentioned, but also this is a division I thought was going to be pretty strong, and it's very weak. So you don't know if that means they're too familiar with each other. And if they step out, maybe they can put it together. Although you got a very short window. You got 3 games in the first round to try and figure something out. And you're going to do it on the road. But, who cares about the road at this point? So it's a real challenge, I think, to know what you are once you leave postseason. And be it this is such a unique postseason, I just think, man, you just got to get in. And then here's the key. Now, here's the one key, though. I think we're starting to see some players who are ready to go home. Okay. They've made just about all the money they're going to make. I mean, their last game check will be tomorrow.
Are you talking about players that are still in the playoff hunt, or are you talking overall players?
Everybody. And, let's say if you're a team that's on the cusp and you're barely playing well and you limp into postseason, you might just say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home and start over again. And then you got some other guys say, hey, look, we're here. We might as well try and win it. So you got to figure out which one of those guys is going to be helpful to you. And the guy who isn't, you got to do something about them. And there are teams that I can guarantee you, most of these teams in baseball have at least one guy who's ready to go home. Ready to go. He's got his money. He's not going to make any more unless he gets in the postseason and he shares money out of a pool. And who knows how long that's going to be for 3 games or the World Series. So I think it's more of a mental makeup now on how this postseason is going to work more than a physical one.
And that's, something I'm looking at the Brewers right now. Brewers are 4 games under 500 going into this 5-game series against the Cardinals this week. That's a team that right now they are on the cusp of making one of those 8 spots in the postseason. The Brewers team you're seeing this week could be completely different than the Brewers team you're seeing next week. You have to assume, I would think that with the Cardinals schedule, between playing, Kansas City and Pittsburgh, in between these 2 Milwaukee series, the Cardinals should be there till the very end.
Well, hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
You're talking about Kansas City and Pittsburgh. Last check, Kansas City took 2 out of 3 from the Cardinals in St. Louis, and the Pirates came in and took a doubleheader. So I don't think we can take anyone for granted at this point as far as their record is concerned, especially Kansas City. So let's take the tradition and the history and let's throw it out of the window because I don't think it applies now. I really don't. I think you have to look at each situation individually because there's just too many things that tell me that just because they have Royals on their jerseys or Pirates, I don't think we can take them for granted. I mean, the Cardinals would be well over 500 if they just did their business against Kansas City and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm looking at Pittsburgh being 14-30 right now, and I'm thinking at the last week of the season, you're assuming they're shutting it down till the end. You're assuming that but you're right, and that brings me to when you're talking about the way this team is set up or the way this team's playing. At what point do you start looking at 2021? Is there anybody that you could bring up and you could? I mean, you mentioned Justin Williams. Is there anybody else that you could down in Springfield that you could get a look at?
I'm looking outside the organization in 2021. I've seen everything that was going to be ready this year. Okay, there's a couple of kids that they didn't show us: Montero, Nolan Gorman, Liberatore, a couple of other guys who may be a year away.
And you knew, Liberatore and Gorman, you knew there was probably no way they were going to play this year. Yeah.
But we've seen just about everybody else. And I now know that I'm going to have to look around. I got to figure out the outfield. I can't come back with the same outfield. I got to make a decision about third base. I got to find out if there's going to be a DH. I mean, there's a lot of things that the Cardinals and a lot of teams like the Cardinals are going to have to figure out in this offseason. They've already canceled general manager meetings, which, they can do on Zoom. That's not a big issue. The winter meetings, that's just a place for the agents to gather. But I think the Cardinals are going to have to be quick, but also cautious, because this will be the last year of the collective bargaining agreement in 21. So who knows what 22 may have in store. So you have to be conscious of the fact you don't want to be long-term committed to a contract that you may not be able to get the most out of because of a potential lockout. So a lot of things are going on, but I think the Cardinals have to be one of the busiest teams in baseball this offseason. And then here's the other question. Who's out there? Who's out there that's a difference maker at the right price, and whether it's players or money that you're going to have to spend as a free agent or as trade trade prospects? I mean, I just don't know.
And that's with the trades that they made to get Goldschmidt and to get Ozuna recently. I'm trying to think what pieces are out there. We've already Oviedo seems to be part of the future.
Yes.
So he's not going to be traded. You got to think Gorman and Liberatore probably aren't going anywhere either, right? Unless, I mean,
I would agree with you. You've got a couple other third basemen in the organization that you could look at. Again, Joe, there's a lot of balls in the air with this team. A whole lot of balls right now as far as what are you going to look like in 2021. And here's something else that goes into it. You have to have an attractive team, because next year, if we are allowed to have fans, you're going to have to fight for them, because we're seeing all over sports that fans have shown not as much interest as you would think from a TV rating standpoint. And until there's some legitimate safety guaranteed with regard to COVID, they're not coming to the park in droves like you would expect them to. So what do you do to make yourself attractive? Do you have a team that swings the bat well and is exciting, steals some bases, does things that make people want to watch? Or do you just say, well, we're going to try and beat everybody 2-1?
Yeah, the last 2 days, and this was something I was talking with Hoffman about before we did one of the shows with Polo, is you saw the glimpses, and I mentioned this earlier, you saw the glimpses on Thursday with the 5 home runs in the doubleheader. You saw Saturday with the home runs there. And it had me wondering if it was bad pitching or if something had changed. And that's and that was his answer too. And that was, that I go to him when I need the stats and when I need to look at the I guess the sabermetrics of the things. And that's what I was wondering, if this was a team that was slowly trying to turn themselves into like a Minnesota Twins type of team where it's going to be just play for the long ball. And so far, I mean, this team swings and misses way too much to do that.
Yeah, I mean, their whole philosophy would have to change.
Yeah.
I know they want to be a team that hits in the gap and runs the bases and things like that. But, Joe, they just don't have it. They just don't have that kind of makeup. And the people they were depending on have not been able to produce. And I guess you could say, well, you got to look at the season. Well, we were looking at last season and the season before, and it was the same result. And you would have thought there would have been a better result this year, and it hasn't come about yet. I mean, Is there 2 weeks left in the schedule where they can all of a sudden catch fire? Yeah, there's 2 weeks worth of games, but I don't know what's showing you the feeling like, okay, they're going to snap out of it. There just hasn't been the consistency you were looking for.
They have, as I'm looking here, 4 doubleheaders. Is that right? 4 doubleheaders the rest of the year. So one thing that Polo and I have been talking about is there hasn't been a true set 1 through 9 yet this year.
No.
I do think a lot of that has to do with the doubleheaders because you are mixing and matching a lot in those games. So as you come down the stretch run here, you're still probably not going to have that set 1 through 9 by the time you do get into October.
Well, even if that's the case, and there's a lot of teams that don't go 1 through 9 set anymore because you're looking for, as you mentioned, matchups and versatility and things of that nature. But when it's all said and done, there hasn't been a good 1 through 9 on this team this year because they haven't been good enough.
No,
I mean, the bottom of the order has just been a black hole right now. And until you figure that out, and unfortunately, it's 3 outfielders for the most part, until you figure that out, you got some problems. And if you do get into postseason play, you're going to be easy to pitch to. You're going to be very easy to pitch to. And that's something the Cardinals are going to have to try and deal with between now and the end of the year. And I don't know how they do it.
And when you count up the rest of the games on the schedule, it only puts the Cardinals at 57. Have you heard anything about those final games, if they're going to try to do anything with that?
Yeah, if somebody has a chance to catch the Cardinals, guess what? We're playing.
Yeah.
We're going to play in Detroit. And
is that who it is? Is that
the
Tigers?
Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah. So they can find themselves on the road the last 2 games of the season. Maybe they play a doubleheader and get it over with. Now that might be an interesting scenario because Detroit at one point thought they were having a chance to climb in it, and maybe they would be one of the teams that would be trying to climb in. So it just really depends on the scenario and how things shake out. But I get the feeling because the Cardinals haven't shown me any indication that they're going to pull away from anybody, that those last 2 games are going to mean something.
Yeah, and you did just have a few more games canceled over the weekend. San Diego and San Francisco had games postponed due to COVID, but they're back on the field playing there. Lou Brock's funeral this weekend. Before we move away from the Cardinals, I saw a lot of good Mike Shannon stories from the funeral. Any other tidbits or stories you want to share?
Yeah, I thought Bob Kendrick from the Negro League Museum, who came over, did a phenomenal job in talking about Lou and his impact, and Buck O'Neill. A lot of good things said about a great man. And I was just glad to know him as long as I did. And, it was a good way. It was a good send-off for sure.
It's been fitting. As we recorded most of the stuff with you and Kamish. We recorded that at the beginning of the month, or at the end of August, I should say. And I think since Lou Brock has passed away, I think 4 of the memories have included Lou Brock stories when we do This Day in Cardinal History. The one that's up today is a doubleheader between the Cardinals and the Cubs from 1961. Where Lou Brock played in his second game as a Chicago Cub in the game. So it's just been fitting that his memories of historic milestones with stolen bases have been popping up, and then a game is Lou Brock as a Cub.
Wait till we get to October.
Yeah.
All the things he did in 21 games, he hit .391. He had 4 home runs. He stole 14 bases. He was everything. So wait till October. We'll have some more Lou Brock highlights.
You're watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. We are driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota. They gave Polo a new 4Runner, Claibs, because they sold the last one that he was driving around, and I guess Polo already has his eyes on he calls it his playoff car that he wants for the Cardinals postseason run that he's already put a request in for. And then Polo told me the other day that I guess they have extended him and Benji for the
going on a cruise.
For the next two seasons. So Polo's already talking to me about what car he could get from Mungenast in the 2021 season, and now Benji wants one too because Benji's jealous. So That's
Well, Benji knows a guy, so that
that's
may
what I'm
help
saying.
out.
This is what I'm dealing with now behind the scenes of
Hey,
everything
listen,
that you're seeing on Claibs Online.
the next thing you have to deal with Polo's agent, I'm sure.
I'm
You'll have a
surprised it hasn't
representative
gotten to
reach
that point
out.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I really am.
I won't take his calls if it comes to that. You're on your own. He may be lost at sea on the next cruise if that's the case.
I know Polo's getting ready to land back in California any minute. He and I will be recording what's in the cards after that for today, just for the doubleheader, and then every day for the rest of the season with that. Hey, football this weekend. I gotta say, this was the first NFL Sunday in 5 years that I have not had to do a show on an NFL Sunday. To just sit down right at noon, have the Red Zone channel going, and just sit there. I didn't know what to do with myself this past week. So it was really, really nice yesterday to just enjoy week 1 of the NFL season.
What'd you think of the play?
I was very surprised with the fact that it seemed like the offense was ahead of the game with the defense, with not having any preseason, with not being able to have any kind of practices against other organizations like we see a lot during the preseason or training camps. I was very surprised with how it seemed like most of the offenses were well-oiled machines for the most part.
Well, I think you make a good point. I think what you also saw was what happens when in practice you can't go full bore defensively and start laying guys out, and your timing's going to be off. And I think they probably need another week to just be in real football shape and the ability to have timing and be able to actually tackle compared to tap a guy on the shoulder pads and say you're it. So, yeah, the offense was a little bit ahead. I thought the offense was pretty good with regard to them not taking bad penalties as far as jumping offside. And, it looked like guys were running pretty good routes. And I agree with you. I think the offense was slightly ahead, but I think you're going to see some adjustments each week for at least the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, as far as the penalties, the false starts, the offsides on the front line, I do wonder how much of a difference it was not having the fans in the crowd, because seeing that and looking at that, it was so. It really, I mean, it's just eerie to look at that and see that there's these stadiums with nobody at all inside them.
No, I agree. I think that's an excellent point you make. And, some athletes feed off of the crowd and the noise and everything else. And, you could literally almost hear guys calling plays in huddles. It was so quiet. So it's something I think we're going to have to get used to for a bit. But I thought overall the quality of play was not as bad as maybe some anticipated. But again, I'm a guy that gives the season 4 weeks before I have my flag day, so to say.
Was there a debut of anybody that you saw making a debut either as a rookie or with a new team that really stood out to you? Brady with the 2 picks, the 1 pick 6. You had Joe Burrow. He was one that really surprised me with how well he played.
Yeah, I thought Burrow played well. I thought Cam Newton played well. I thought Cam Newton really managed the game well for New England. Then there are teams that they are who they are. It's always going to be Detroit. It's always going to be Cleveland. And they'll always have the inability to get out of their own way. But when you look around, I thought everybody else was reasonably good. I don't think we had many real upsets with regard to somebody saying, whoa, this team is really impressive. I think everybody who won probably won because they were the better team instead of being a fluke. And I know some people might say, well, a guy drops a ball in the end zone in Detroit. As I just mentioned, it's Detroit. And then you had the pass interference call against Dallas. That could have gone either way. But when you look overall, I thought it was a reasonable first weekend of the season.
You look at how Cincinnati lost their game yesterday.
Yeah.
As Joe Burrow drives them down to the field. They call offensive pass interference on A.J. Green, and they think that they're just going to go out there and play for overtime. And Randy Bullock, the kicker, I guess pulled a hamstring. And if he didn't, he did a great job of pretending like he pulled a hamstring.
I'd have ice on it for the rest of the week for sure.
Yeah.
just to make sure I get another week to kick.
Maybe sit out week 2 and hope that nobody steals your job.
Well, I got news for you. Tomorrow, there'll be a ton of kickers in Cincinnati trying out.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, speaking of bad starts, so we're doing the NFL picks segment. We're sending them out there. So it's me, you, Frank's producer, Brian Hoffman, and my co-host, Andy Hanselman. You and Frank are in the lead after week 1 with a record of 2-3.
Wow, I didn't think I was that good.
Yeah, what saved you was you being the only one that picked the Bears to win.
Yeah, and you know what? That was the one I really was going to hedge on. I said the Bears are going to do me in like they always do. But again, you think about who they were playing.
Yeah,
here's a question for you. You know, like Matt Patricia is going. It'll be interesting to see if he survives the season because they're going no place fast.
No, and they have a good quarterback. They brought in a veteran running back in Adrian Peterson who didn't had a decent game there, but that's just one of those teams that every now and then they'll surprise you and make the playoffs at 9-7 or 10-6.
Mm-hmm.
They go right back into being bad.
Yeah, they'll be an interesting team to watch in their growth and how long will they give Patricia.
Monday Night Football first, before we get to Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football last night, how much of that did you watch to see?
I watched some of it. Yeah. I think I told you, I remember when the stadium was being built, and I was in awe of the size of it, and to see the finished product from TV was impressive. I also found it embarrassing that the best the Rams could do with a uniform change was go out and put on practice uniforms. I mean, their uniforms are so nondescript. If you're into that sort of stuff, I thought it was kind of a joke.
The patch that says Los Angeles Rams on it, that's the part of the uniform
that like me. Yeah, it's like an art class. It's like somebody in third grade put that together.
Yeah, it's like they put the whole uniform together, and they're like, wait a second, we're not sure which team this is. Let's
remind everybody who we are. Yeah, okay. So I wasn't a big fan of that. But it's the NFL. I mean, it's always going to have some issues.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it. The stadium, first of all, they shouldn't be patting themselves on the back for the amount of times they said yesterday that it was a $5 billion stadium, bragging like that's a good thing. Not once did they mention the proposed $3 billion stadium that turned into a $5 billion stadium. Not once did they mention that. Not once did they mention the fact that it was supposed to be opened last year, and it was delayed and not open until this year, and many other things that were not mentioned. And that's the thing. It was upsetting to see Al Michaels talking about it as much as he was, but I get it. Al Michaels is an LA guy. You're telling me he doesn't love the fact that he doesn't have to get on a plane anymore to fly to some of these Sunday night games, and he could just drive there? I get that.
Or be limo there.
Right. What I'm looking forward to is the first time the Rams play the game of the week on Fox, and we get Joe Buck saying some stuff about it, because Joe Buck's been known to take a few shots, and I think that he will.
He might, but as we look back and we cry on our milk here in St. Louis, rightfully so. It was a very good business decision on the surface for Stan Kroenke. It was his method and how he did it is what I think leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth, because he had us chasing our tail here thinking that if we build him a stadium, he was going to stay. And we learned that was just a big pile of, crap, where it was never going to happen. And I think that's the thing. We felt deceived more than anything else. Is he going to make money off this stadium? I don't know. I mean, $5 billion is a lot of money to try and get back. I don't care what the naming rights are, and I don't care how many events you have. But, when you look at it, you say, well, it is a pretty nice little setup. And St. Louis couldn't have done anything close to that.
No.
All right.
No.
We're talking about an open air stadium on the riverfront. I mean, who does that anymore? I mean, it's just I get it. I just didn't agree with the process.
Right. And eventually you and I probably will both have our chances to go there and see some kind of event there. And, we'll walk around, we'll look at everything and just be in awe of everything that it is. And it was, the way it was built was shady. And by the way, I had Steve Weich on my show this weekend of the NFL Network, who is a St. Louis guy. Was it Parkway? I think Parkway guy.
Yeah.
And I asked him about that. I asked him if the NFL Network is ever going to eventually cover the upcoming lawsuits, the trial here in St. Louis. And the one thing he said is that right now it's just a regional issue. It's just a St. Louis issue, and it's probably not going to be covered.
I agree.
But the second that Jerry Jones or Roger Goodell or Stan Kroenke are called in and there's some sort of decision made, he said, depending on the decision or what the discovery process finds, he said that would open it up and that would make it a national story.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You got to understand that the NFL Network, which is owned by the NFL, isn't going to make a bigger stink about this if they don't have to. It's going to have to be a network or some outlet that doesn't have a relationship with the NFL. Yeah. So that excludes ABC, CBS, ESPN, NBC. It's going to have to be somebody else who's going to have to really roll it out there. And I just don't know if anybody really, as he mentions, really cares.
Yeah. And the NFL Network is going to be based at that stadium. So they're, I think they're also paying maybe $1 for rent a year too, or whatever it is that Dean Spanos is paying. Are you? How much of the Monday Night Football are you going to watch tonight?
I'm going to try and get. Well, obviously, I've got some Cardinal baseball to attend to, but I'm going to sneak a peek at it. New Monday Night crew: Louis Riddick, Steve Levy, two guys that I know fairly well, and who's the other guy?
I'm trying to think who it is that they brought in, but they have the 2 games going too. So they have the is it Mike Greenberg doing the second game like he usually does?
I believe so.
Okay. I was gonna say they usually have him do that. I'm not sure.
Well, then again, I have no idea. I guess I'm gonna have to tune in and watch. But one of the things about it, while we make this big deal about the announcers, so they're on camera for 3 minutes before the game, maybe.
Yeah, Brian Greasy.
2 minutes. Yeah, Joe, Brian Greasy.
Joe Tessor was last year, but yeah, Brian Greasy's on there.
Yeah. But so they're on camera for, let's say, 8 minutes total. And we make this big deal about them every year. The content that they provide internally is something obviously we'll pay attention to. But, I don't know if it has the impact on the game like it used to, as far as the impact of, I can't wait to see Howard Cosell butcher somebody, or I can't wait to hear the insight of Dan Dierdorf or Frank Gifford or Al Michaels or people like that. So it because we have so many more games, we have so many more national games, so it doesn't have the impact. But it's always interesting to hear new faces and new angles and how networks want to push a game. And knowing Lewis as I do, he's his own guy, and he's a very observant individual. He's a good player in college, had a decent career in the NFL, but was a really smart guy and understood X's and O's and how management worked as well. So I'm anxious to see what he's got to say. Brian has been more of a college guy, so it'll be nice to see a different insight. And Steve Levy has done a lot of things at ESPN. I mean, he might be the second most tenured guy there. I can't think of who the first one is, but Levy's been there for a while.
And Kenny Mayne, Linda Cohn.
Linda Cohn might be in the clubhouse with the league.
Yeah.
But I don't think there are many people beyond what Steve has done since he's been there.
I'm trying to, I think it's, I believe game 2 tonight is Kurt Herbstreit and Chris Fowler.
I like that. I think Kirk Herbstreit's one of the best analysts that we have in sports. He's very well prepared. An interesting guy who had to leave his hometown because of the pressure of his job and how he was treated by Ohio State fans. Got a couple of kids at Clemson playing for Dabo. And he's a good man. He does a good job. And I know I'll probably try and catch some of his work tonight as well.
What did you think of his comments last week on the College Game Day show?
Well, it was emotional for sure, and I felt it, and I appreciated it. And listen, the only way we're going to get things changed and get things going, we have to have people who don't look like me take a real interest. And Kirk obviously has, and his voice resonates more than mine. And here's the best example. Colin Kaepernick took a knee a couple, 3 years ago. It took Drew Brees, a white quarterback, to tell everybody that this is not about the flag. Taking a knee is not about the flag and disrespecting the flag, for the rest of the world say, hey, you're right. And for the hardheads and the people who won't ever acknowledge that, the people who are more common sense thinkers said, okay, I see what you mean now. But it took Drew Brees to say what Kaepernick and everybody else has been saying well before he said it. So we have to have people like Herbstreit and Brees get involved in the conversation and trying to help things move forward. So I had no problem with it. I did have an issue. Well, I know Chipotle would have an issue. He said his kids are safer at Clemson than they would be at a Chipotle. I've got a different slant about this whole COVID thing. And you and I have shared it about, would you let my kids would not be playing anywhere. Okay, because we just don't know. And while I'm amused by how many people who we have on TV or radio show who want us to play, and you say, well, wait a minute, this is how you make a living, right? You definitely want them to play. Whether it's a coach or an athletic director, whatever, yeah, they want them to play because that's how they make a living. And I get it. And I make a living at it. But I am also cognizant of the fact that, this is not necessarily, we don't have everything we need to know. And I'll give you a good example. I know this Sam Page out in the county is catching a lot of heat. Now, I don't know Sam Page, didn't vote for him, but I did understand that, he's getting information from somewhere to give him the reason on why he thought it was a good idea to shut things down. Now, maybe if Sam Page divulge and share that information with people, maybe they'd have a better understanding. But I don't think a guy would want to be asshole of the month by shutting schools down or shutting sports down if he didn't have a pretty darn good reason. I mean, everybody likes to be liked, so there must be more to it. But we have so many people who are rushing to judgment when they don't even have enough information. The experts, the so-called experts, don't have enough information. So it's a very challenging situation in our society that we have to come to grips with. And for people who feel like, well, my kids can't play, they won't get a scholarship. Let me be clear on two things here. If your kid was any good, he wouldn't be chasing a scholarship. A scholarship would be chasing him. If you feel like your kid hasn't been getting any exposure, well, maybe he's not a guy that's worthy of that level. And maybe you ought to think about some other ways to get his name out there if you think it's that important. And more importantly, we get caught up in this thing so much, and it's like, damn, the torpedoes full speed ahead. And we have to think about this. I'd rather have my kid around me and alive for a long, long time compared to running the risk of him getting a scholarship and something go wrong until I have more information that gives me a greater comfort level. And right now I don't. Yeah. And I know that's hard for some parents to deal with. I get it. But I just think if you want your kid to be safe and you want your kid to have an opportunity, what's wrong with playing in the spring? Nobody said they were going to cancel. They just said they want to move it back. And for those two sport athletes, well, you're going to have to make a decision on one of them sooner or later anyway. So we can't have our cake and eat it too. We're in a freaking pandemic, okay, where everybody's life has changed.
Yeah, you have grown children. My son just being 7 years old, it was a very easy decision to just say, you know what, you're 7. You don't need to be out there playing baseball or whatever this year. I know he missed out on doing basketball camps and stuff that he had planned on doing this summer, but for the people that I see that have to get their kids out there, their 7, 8, 9-year-olds out there, it's just why? What's the reason? You think at 8 years old that there's going to be a college coach sitting here and looking at your kid and saying, I need to keep my eye on this kid for the next 10 years? It's just, you can be a parent and take your kid out and do stuff with him. You don't need him to be at the park and rec just to give him something to do.
Here's the other thing that comes into this that people don't want to acknowledge. Just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can't get it. And if it doesn't affect you in the manner it could affect another family member, because we're seeing that it has a different impact on different people. And, heaven forbid, if you took it home to a grandparent or an elder person or someone whose immune system you didn't know couldn't handle it. I mean, there are just so many pitfalls to it that we want to rush to judgment on something that we don't even know enough about. And that's my concern.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking about Herb Street, Fowler. The college football still doesn't seem like it's here.
I agree
I mean,
with you.
it doesn't. It just doesn't seem, and I think it's because the SEC hasn't started yet. You didn't get those big primetime matchups at a neutral site, Labor Day weekend. I don't know what it's going to, you haven't had any Big Ten teams play, Pac-12 teams. None of these, a lot of the powerhouses haven't even stepped onto the field yet. I don't know what it's going to take for me to feel like college football is here, but it hasn't happened yet as they're 2 weeks into, I guess 3 weeks into the season. And what is it? No, not this weekend, but the following weekend. Is that when the SEC starts up?
26th.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Joe. I think they're also missing. I think if there's one sport that relies on the emotion of fans, it's college football, the bands and all the pageantry that comes with it, and just the intensity. I think it's a different animal than the NFL. The NFL is about perfection, fine-tuned players. College is more about emotion and growth. And this is a situation that we're dealing with now. And I think because we don't see that sort of stuff, it kind of makes it feel empty. Yeah. I was watching a little bit of the Notre Dame game, and, they scored a touchdown, and I'm waiting on the Leprechaun to run out there and the band and wake up the echoes. And, none of that was going on to the level that we've been accustomed to. And I really think that that's what's missing in college football. Now, the SEC, knowing them, man, they'll let everybody in next week. All right. I mean, I don't think I know that they are trying to be safety conscious, but you just look at how some of these states that they're in are run, and some of them are burning to the ground, and they just feel like there's nothing wrong. So who knows how that's going to unfold?
Before we move on and wrap things up here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, Ryan Kelly, one of our sponsors, the Home Loan Expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Mortgage rates are pretty great right now, Claibs.
They are incredible, some under 2. And the neat thing about Ryan Kelly is the fact that you can call or go online and apply and know what you're dealing with money-wise. I mean, a lot of people who've never made the investment in a home, there's a lot of legwork that comes with it. And if you're already in pocket and you know what you can spend and they can turn it around and close you in less than 30 days, that's a good feeling to have. And they have great experience with it. They made it a quick and efficient manner that a lot of people would really appreciate this stage of our lives. So if you're not sure and you need to talk to somebody who really understands the industry and can give you some direction and make sure that your paperwork is right, I'd start with the Home Loan Expert, Ryan Kelly. You can go online and check him out, or you can give him a call as well. But certainly they are where it starts, and for a lot of people where it finishes when it comes to purchasing your home, which in my opinion is the second biggest investment you're going to make other than your family.
And right now, Ryan is training for his 6th annual Climb for the Kids. September 23rd through the 27th is when he's doing that. You can find out all the information for that at climbforthekids.com. He's right now he's live in Colorado. He's been posting a lot of videos. If you go to the Climb for the Kids Facebook page and find all the details about that, it's one of the great things that he does. Ryan always giving back to the community.
No doubt about it. And I'm excited for him, and I know he'll do well and raise a lot of money.
Hey, we're winding down to the end of the NBA and the NHL season. It looks like, I'll just quickly, NHL, it looks like our finals are going to be the Lightning against the Stars. Both are up 3-1 in their conference finals. I can't imagine the NHL is too happy about Tampa and Dallas being their final 2 cities.
Well, you know what? They'd be happier. They're happy in one sense because you got a Florida market, you got a Texas market. Can you imagine if? And here's my point: the NBA's numbers suffered last year in the finals because they had a Canadian team in it, and those numbers don't show up in the book. Dallas and Tampa are 2 teams that probably should have been playing in Stanley Cup Finals last year. Tampa gets knocked off in the first round. The Blues knock off Dallas. They both made some subtle adjustments. I think for hockey fans, it'll be a very entertaining series. And for people who are ratings conscious, don't worry about it. Those are fringe people anyway. Hockey fans are going to watch. Now, here's the question for you. Will Blues fans watch? And the reason why I say that is The numbers for hockey go way down once their team is out of the playoffs. And this is where the NBA just crushes the NHL in St. Louis because people follow the NBA more than people would be willing to admit. But you got a St. Louis Impact. You got Ben Bishop doesn't play anymore, but Rick Bowness started his career with the St. Louis Blues. He replaced Jim Montgomery, who started his career with the St. Louis Blues. And then on the other side there's our buddy Pat Maroon. And you also have John Cooper, who started his coaching career coaching Junior A Blues here in St. Louis as well. Or not the Blues. I forgot the name of the team they were, but he was coaching that team. So a lot of St. Louis flavor to it. I will try and watch as much as I can. And I think it'll be a good series.
I'll tell you what's going to ruin some of the ratings as my powers keeps flashing on and off. Not sure what's happening here. If you could see that, what's going to crush the ratings?
Get Ameren, Illinois over there and get you straightened out.
I use Ameren, Illinois, so we need to. I need to hit him up and find out what's happening here. One thing that might crush the NHL ratings is a guy that's playing in the NBA Eastern Conference Finals right now. Jason Tatum is the Celtics and the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. We have a Game 7 before we make it to the Western Conference Final. Lakers are already in. Is it Game 7 tomorrow night between the Nuggets and the Clippers?
Is it tomorrow or tonight?
Is it tonight? I can't imagine they're going up against Monday Night Football, right?
No, you're right. It's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. Game 1 of Heat and Celtics is also tomorrow. So you have a Game 1 and a Game 7.
Yeah, it's going to be Denver is a very entertaining team to watch. I think that they match up. They ran across the right team because the Clippers don't want to play defense. And they're paying a severe price. But they had one of the best players in the game in Kawhi Leonard. He's the only guy that is willing to guard. It's going to be a battle, but I like the Clippers by a little bit because of their experience. Denver's just happy to be at the party right now. So we'll see how that unfolds. And on the other side, you've got Boston and Milwaukee. Should be a good series.
Boston, Miami,
yeah. And Miami's a good, well-coached team, good defensively. And they'll make it hard for Jason Tatum and the Celtics.
By the way, Giannis, he unfollowed everybody, all of his Milwaukee Buck teammates on Instagram. Is that something you ever thought that you were going to have to follow when it came to covering sports?
That's why I don't follow it. You know what? I get it. Sometimes you just want to step away from it, man. I mean, the social media can be very addictive, and sometimes you need to step away from it. I know he's disappointed. I'm sure there are whispers about him in Milwaukee. I was talking to somebody today about that, and they don't know what the future holds on whether they'll be able to keep that thing together or not. So he just probably needed a break, and I certainly understand.
Yeah, it's it's one of those. As the rumors are swirling about him going to Golden State,
how are they gonna pay him?
That's
how are they gonna pay him? They got you're paying Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, all of them making over $20 million.
Yeah,
Steph's making 40. The cap is flat. I don't see how that works.
Yeah, that's Draymond Green probably.
Plus, here's the other thing. He doesn't fit that team. He can't shoot.
Right.
When Durant was there, and I know they make the similarity, they make the comparisons, but Durant could shoot. He could score.
Durant got so much heat for going there. I can't imagine you're going to see another star player like Giannis want to go follow that.
Who knows? You don't know who's pulling the strings on that.
Also, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks and you let somebody go with the talent of Giannis, you can never live that down again.
Well, they did it once. They let a guy named Lou Alcindor go to the Lakers.
Right.
So it's happened before.
Right. Hey, you got anything lined up this week interview-wise?
Chris Landry we're scheduled to visit with later in the week if we can get him in between double headers at some point. It seems like I'm going to be knee-deep in those for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, just worry about lining all that stuff up mid to late October, all those interviews as you focus on all the Cardinal stuff for hopefully the next few weeks.
I hope so.
Yeah, this has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe. By the way, we'll keep having This Day in Cardinal History up every day, all the way through the end of the season. I'll be doing the Daily Cardinal Show with Polo, so plenty of content up online each and every day on Claibs Online. This has been powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, and also financed by the Home Loan Experts. Ryan Kelly, find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. He is Mike Claiborne. I am Joe Roderick. Listen to him. How many times this week? How many games? 10 games this week? On
I've lost track.
Have a wonderful broadcast. We'll talk to you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
All right.